Most people think power comes from speaking, but the greatest power has always belonged to the one who knows how to ask. A question can cut. A question can reveal. A question can collapse an entire argument that someone spent years building in their own mind. And here's the paradox no one tells you. If you use questions to silence others, you become a manipulator. If you use questions to awaken others, you become a philosopher. Socrates understood this better than anyone who ever walked the earth. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the richest. He didn't command armies or sit on a throne. Yet he became the one man in history who never lost a single debate. Not because he was always right, but because he never entered a debate to win. While others exhausted themselves defending opinions, throwing statements, raising their voices, flexing their ego, Socrates did something different, something quiet, something brilliant. He asked questions, each question sharp as a blade, so precise it sliced through arguments, until they collapsed under their own weight. He didn't try to dominate the room. He didn't raise his voice to make a point. He used silence the way warriors use weapons, calmly, patiently, decisively. And today, you will learn how he did it, because if you master this art, you won't just win arguments. You will control conversations, de-escalate conflict, unmask illusion, and most importantly, you will gain mastery over yourself. But before we dive into the 5 devastating questions strong enough to dismantle any argument, any belief, any illusion, you must understand why asking always defeats arguing, and why so few people ever realize this truth. Why questions always win. Even before the debate begins, someone makes an argument. They expose themselves. They build a tower word by word, belief by belief, hoping it stands tall enough to impress, intimidate, or convince. But every tower has a weak foundation, and all it takes is one question, one carefully chosen brick pulled from the bottom, and the whole structure collapses. A statement can be wrong. A belief can be flawed. A conclusion can be based on fear, habit, or ego. But a genuine question can never be wrong. That's the psychological edge Socrates mastered. Arguments make people defensive. Questions make people think. Most people don't want to think, they want to win. But the moment they start defending, they lose clarity. Socrates didn't attack the ego. He invited the ego to walk deeper into its own maze, until it reached the dead end it didn't know existed. He didn't destroy people. He destroyed their illusions. And in that destruction, truth finally had room to breathe. But here's the truth no one sees until it's too late. When you argue, you lock yourself inside your own belief. When you question, you unlock the belief of others. That's why Socrates never fought the person. He fought the foundation of their certainty. People think they lose arguments because they're not smart enough. But the real reason: they defend conclusions they never examined. They protect beliefs they never questioned. And they stand on ground they never tested. Most people live not by thought, but by repetition. They repeat what they heard. They repeat what the crowd says. They repeat what feels comfortable, what strokes their ego, what keeps their worldview intact. And when someone like Socrates enters the room, someone who asks instead of asserts, their mind begins to shake, even before he says the first question, because deep down they know their truth may not survive the light. And this is where the Socratic method becomes unstoppable. Not loud, not aggressive, not confrontational, but devastating, because questions do not attack the person. They attack the illusion, and illusions, no matter how strongly a person clings to them, cannot withstand a mind that dares to investigate. Part 1. The first strike. How do you know that's true? It sounds innocent, small, simple, almost too soft to cause any real impact. But this one question is the beginning of collapse. Everyone has beliefs. Almost no one knows why they believe them. You ask them, how do you know that's true? And suddenly the air changes. Their mind reaches for evidence, but finds only echoes of the crowd. I heard it somewhere. Everyone knows that. It's obvious. Those answers reveal everything. They never examined the belief. The belief examined them. And that is the danger Socrates understood more deeply than anyone alive. Untested beliefs don't just mislead you. They secretly control you. People say social media is destroying the world. People say you need a degree to succeed. People say money equals happiness. But when you ask them, how do you know that's true? They freeze, because they've been living inside a script written by someone else. The collapse of a confident mind. A story from Athens. An afternoon in Athens. A young man, smart, proud, certain, approached Socrates. He lifted his chin and proclaimed, "Your philosophy is useless. Reality is the only truth." Socrates smiled gently, not mockingly, not with superiority, but with the calm of a man who has walked this path 1,000 times. He asked, "And how do you know that's true?" The young man blinked. Confusion cracked the surface of his confidence. He replied, "Because everyone says so." Socrates stepped closer, tilted his head, and whispered, "Everyone, or you?" No one remembers what the young man said next, only that he walked away silent, not defeated, but awakened. For the first time, he realized he had lived his entire life never questioning the source of his own convictions. That's the power of the first Socratic question. It doesn't destroy a person. It destroys the illusion they mistook for truth. How to use this question in real life when someone says, "This task can't be done." Ask, "Are you sure?" Based on whose experience? When someone tells you, "You're going to fail," ask, "What makes you so certain?" And then stay silent. Silence is the blade. Silence forces them to hear their own thoughts without the comfort of noise. And for those who think they know everything, those who cling tightly to their beliefs, silence becomes a mirror they cannot escape. The advanced variation, the question that flips reality in a while. Use this. What would have to be true for that to be false? This question does not cut. It inverts. It flips their logic upside down until they see the blind spots they've ignored for years. Sometimes it's so powerful, it can make even the most stubborn person sit still like a statue. Part 2. The second strike. What are you assuming? If the first question cracks the surface, the second one dives straight into the ocean beneath. Every argument, no matter how polished, no matter how confident, is an iceberg. You only see the visible tip. What keeps it afloat? Are the hidden assumptions buried underneath? But here's the problem. Most people live their entire lives without ever examining those assumptions. They believe their conclusions are truth, when in reality their assumptions are illusions. Take a statement you hear all the time: people should go to college because college leads to good jobs. It sounds reasonable until you ask, what are you assuming? Suddenly the argument begins to tremble, because hidden beneath it are layers people never question. They assume everyone wants the same kind of job. They assume the value of life is measured in money. They assume college always leads to success. They assume one definition of good job fits every human being. Strip away those assumptions, and the original argument collapses like a house with no foundation. This is why Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, not because imagination is dangerous, but because assumptions are." Most people don't suffer from what's real. They suffer from the stories they tell themselves about what is wealthy say. I need people's approval. But they never ask, what makes me believe I need that? They say, I'm not good enough. But they never question, compared to who? They say, everyone should follow the same path. But they never stop to investigate. What path am I assuming is the only one? When assumptions stay unexamined, they quietly shape your entire life, like invisible hands pulling every string without your awareness. The Emperor and the Soldier. A lesson about offensive fears, an old story about a young soldier who approached Marcus Aurelius. Emperor, he said, how can I avoid being offended? Marcus didn't lecture him. He didn't repeat moral quotes. He simply replied, by understanding that words cannot offend unless you assume they can. The soldier stood in silence, because in that moment he saw the truth. The pain wasn't in the words. It was in the assumption hidden behind them. The assumption that other people's opinions define you. The assumption that criticism lowers your worth. The assumption that offense means you must react. Remove the assumption, and the emotional wound disappears. How to use this question in real life when someone says, I'm not good enough. Don't argue. Don't comfort. Just ask, compared to who? In that moment, the illusion shatters. Their suffering came not from reality, but from comparison. When someone says, everyone should think this way, ask, are you assuming everyone wants the same life as you? You've just pulled the invisible thread the entire belief was hanging on. When someone insists, this is the only way, ask, only way, based on whose story? Yours or the crowd's? This is the beauty of the second Socratic question. It doesn't destroy people. It destroys the hidden beliefs that control them. Most people don't fear truth. They fear the collapse of everything they assumed was true. The hidden layer where truth sleeps every human mind has two layers. One, the layer of statements, what people say they believe. Two, the layer of assumptions, what their life actually reveals they believe. The Socratic method never attacks the first layer. It dives into the second, because that's where clarity lives. That's where lies hide. That's where transformation begins, and when you pull someone's assumptions into the light. They're no longer standing on a mountain. They're standing on fog. That's why this second question is so devastating. It doesn't need force. It doesn't need volume. It doesn't need conflict. It just needs courage. Because the moment a person sees the assumptions they've been living under, they can never unsee them. Part 3. The third strike. What evidence would change your mind? If the first question exposes the roots, and the second reveals the soil beneath them, then the third question tests something deeper, the flexibility of the mind itself. Because this question separates the thinker from the believer, the wise from the stubborn, the seeker of truth from the defender of ego. Most people don't guard their beliefs because they're true. They guard them because they're familiar. Familiarity feels safe, and safety, especially emotional safety, feels like truth. But here is where Socrates delivers the cleanest cut of all. He asks, "What evidence would change your mind?" And in that moment, you find out everything you need to know about a person. If they say, "Nothing could ever change my view," then you don't need to debate anymore. Because they're no longer speaking from reason. They're speaking from identity to them. Changing their belief feels like changing who they are. And that's why they cling so hard. Not to truth, but to the self-image they built around it. Why this question terrifies people? This question forces honesty. It demands humility. It shines a light on a truth most people avoid. If no evidence can change your mind, you're not thinking anymore. You're worshipping your belief. This is where Epictetus enters the conversation from across centuries. He once said, "No man can learn what he thinks he already knows." The Socratic Method isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about revealing that their mind has already shut its doors. And a closed mind cannot grow. A closed mind cannot see. A closed mind cannot evolve. When you ask this question, you're not confronting the argument. You're confronting the person's capacity to change. And most people cannot bear that level of introspection. A real conversation and the truth revealed imaging. Someone says, "Crypto is a scam." All relationships always end badly. Or people can't change. Instead of arguing, you simply ask, what kind of evidence would make you change your mind? If they say, "Nothing, that's just how I think," you've already won. Because they've confessed, out loud, that they're not guided by logic, but by pride. This is the brilliance of Socrates. He never needed to prove someone wrong. He let them prove it themselves. How to use this question in real life when someone tries to force their views on you. Their politics, their pessimism, their fear disguised as advice. Ask calmly, if new facts appeared, would you be open to re-examining your view? If they answer no, you know their certainty is nothing more than a cage. If they say yes, you've opened the door to real dialogue. This question is not about winning. It's about revealing whether the person in front of you is driven by reason or by ego, whether they are capable of growth or trapped in their own narrative, whether they are thinking or merely defending. The wisdom hidden behind this third question. This question teaches a lesson every Stoic understood. Truth is not something you defend. Truth is something you seek. The person who asks, "What evidence would change your mind?" is not looking for victory. They're looking for clarity. They want to know if the conversation can move forward or if it has already reached its limit. A conversation with a closed mind is not a conversation. It's a wall, and walls don't think. They only echo so when you use this third question. You skip the battle and go straight to the heart of the matter. Is this a thinker or a believer? Part 4. The fourth strike. What would someone who disagrees with you say if? The third question tests the openness of the mind. The fourth tests its range. Most people can only see through one window, their own. They mistake it for the whole sky. They confuse their perspective with reality. And that's the tragedy. They never step outside themselves. They never leave their own point of view. They never imagine how the world looks from another angle. This is why arguments today are loud but empty. People don't listen. They wait to respond. But the fourth Socratic question destroys this illusion. What would someone who disagrees with you say? It forces the mind to turn around, to leave its comfort zone, to stand in the shoes of another. And for many, that's the most difficult journey of all. Because the weak aim to win, the smart aim to understand. But the wise seek to understand even those who oppose them. Why this question cuts deeper than logic? This question is not intellectual. It is psychological. It exposes whether a person truly understands the issue, or whether they only understand their side. If someone says, capitalism is the best system, and you ask, what would a critic of capitalism say? And they reply with, they're jealous, they're poor, they're lazy. Then they've just revealed something profound. They've never listened to the opposing argument. They don't understand what they're defending, and they're arguing against a strawman, not a real position. Socrates believed a mind is not wise unless it can explain the other person's argument better than they can themselves. Marcus Aurelius taught his son the same principle: to understand deeply, understand both sides. This is not softness. This is not indecision. This is mastery. A story from an old military academy. Picture this: a discussion room filled with young officers. The smell of leather, sweat, discipline. A young man stands up with conviction. The army is fair. Whoever breaks the rules is punished. The room nods. It sounds noble, firm, orderly. Then an older instructor leans forward, eyes like steel sharpened by decades of experience, and asks one simple question: and what if the rule itself was written by an unjust man? Silence, instant, heavy, paralyzing silence. See, no one had ever thought about that. They had memorized the rules, but never examined the system. They understood obedience, but not justice. That silence was the sound of assumptions collapsing and perspective expanding. That is the power of the fourth Socratic question. It breaks the illusion of certainty. It opens mental doors people never knew existed. How to use this question in real life when someone argues politics with you. Don't counterattack. Just ask. If you were born in another country, would you still think the same? When someone insists they're right, it must be this way. It's obvious. It's common sense. Ask, if you were raised in a different culture, would this still be obvious to you? When someone is furious, defensive, stuck in their own mind, ask gently, if you were me right now, how would you feel? It is impossible for someone to answer this question honestly without expanding their viewpoint. Even the most stubborn person cannot escape the moment of empathy this question forces. The secret behind this question's power, this question doesn't try to win. It tries to open it, doesn't aim to crush the other person. It aims to elevate the conversation, because true wisdom is not rigid. It is spacious. It sees from multiple angles. It expands rather than contracts. And the person who can articulate both sides of an argument will always understand the truth more deeply than the person who knows only one. To ask this question is to step out of yourself and invite the other person to do the same. And once someone sees a different angle of reality, even for a moment, they can never return to the simplicity of their old worldview. Part 5. The Final Strike. What would happen if everyone thought like you? If the fourth question forces the mind to step outside itself. The fifth forces it to step outside the world it knows. This is the question that drags an idea out of theory and throws it into reality. Hard, cold, unforgiving reality. Most arguments sound noble in the clouds. They shine. They impress. They feel airtight, but the moment you apply them to the entire world, their beauty starts to fracture. Because this question exposes something people never consider. A belief is only true if it can stand when applied universally. If it collapses when everyone adopts it, it was never truth, only convenience. Socrates called this method reductio ad absurdum, taking a belief to its furthest limit and watching what survives. And most beliefs don't survive very far. The illusion of good ideas. Someone says, people should be free to do whatever they want, as long as they don't hurt anyone. Sounds beautiful, progressive, enlightened. But ask, if everyone truly lived that way, who decides what hurt means? Is emotional harm included? Long-term harm? Self-harm? Silent harm? Invisible harm? Suddenly, the perfect philosophy crumbles. And that's the point. Ideas often fall apart when forced to face reality instead of imagination. This question burns through the fog of idealism and reveals the consequences people conveniently ignore, because the person who enjoys the freedom of lying just a little would not enjoy a world where everyone lies just a little. The person who justifies shortcuts would not survive a world where everyone justifies shortcuts. The principle reveals itself ruthlessly. If your belief breaks the moment the world adopts it, it was never a principle. It was a personal excuse. The ancient Stoic standard, Universalitimachus Aurelius, wrote, "What is right cannot be right only for you. It must be right for all." He believed this so deeply that he used it as a guide for every decision he made as emperor. That's the essence of this fifth question. It strips away selfishness disguised as logic. It exposes conveniences dressed up as principles. It tests whether your belief is real or merely self-serving. And once a belief is exposed under this light, you can no longer hide behind it. Everyday examples that collide with reality. When someone says, "Relax, I only lied a little," ask, if everyone lied a little, would trust still exist? When someone excuses themselves, "I did it because everyone else does," ask, if everyone thought that way, who would be the first to stop? When someone justifies their behavior, At least I didn't hurt anyone. Ask, if everyone behaved this way, would the world be better or worse? These questions hit harder than criticism because they reflect the truth people already know but don't want to face. A mirror is gentle, but a mirror of consequences that can shatter illusions instantly. Why this fifth question is the most devastating. It bypasses ego. It bypasses emotion. It bypasses personal bias. It moves the conversation from what I want to what would happen if this became the rule for everyone. And in that shift, people see the ripple effect of their choices. Most arguments die here, not because they were attacked, but because they could not survive their own logic. And that's the heart of the Socratic Method. Don't fight the belief. Make the belief fight itself. The question that changes minds without Forsyth's final strike isn't loud. It isn't angry. It isn't confrontational. It simply asks, what would happen if this belief became universal? If their philosophy cannot hold when everyone embraces it, then it was never a philosophy. It was a preference, and preferences cannot stand the weight of truth. Part 6. Advanced Tactics. The silent tools of a Stoic mind. Be now. You understand the 5 devastating questions. But Socrates didn't rely on questions alone. He used techniques, quiet, subtle, psychological techniques that turned ordinary conversations into revelations. These are the advanced strategies, the hidden blades behind the Socratic Method. Point 1. The strategic silence. After you ask a question, say nothing. Let the silence expand. Let it touch the other person's thoughts. Let it echo inside their own mind. Most people cannot bear silence. They rush to fill it, and in doing so, they reveal the part of themselves they tried hardest to hide. Silence is not empty. Silence is a pressure chamber, and a pressured mind exposes truth. 2. The clarification loop. When someone responds vaguely, I don't know, it's just like that, you ask calmly, can you explain that a bit more? And when the second answer is still vague, ask again. What do you mean exactly? Repeat. Repeat gently. Repeat without judgment. Eventually, they reach a breaking point the moment they realize they don't actually understand their own argument. That moment changes people, not because you defeated them, but because you made them meet themselves. 3. The example trap. People love big, dramatic statements. But ask them, can you give me a real example? And watch the argument evaporate. General claims sound powerful until they collide with reality. If they can't provide a concrete example, the belief collapses under its own emptiness. 4. The consistency check. Humans contradict themselves more than they realize. You said A earlier, but now you're saying B. How do those fit together? This is not confrontation. This is illumination, because no one can outrun their own contradictions. Eventually, their reasoning traps them in a corner where honesty becomes the only exit. Part 7. The art of defense. What do you do when someone uses the Socratic Method on you? You stay calm, centered, still. A question is not an attack. It's an invitation. Instead of getting defensive, you say, that's a good question, but what's your view on it? This flips the dynamic. You bring the other person out from behind the shield of questioning and return the conversation to balance. And remember, not every moment is a battlefield for logic. Not every disagreement needs analysis. Not every emotion needs interrogation. Socrates knew when not to use the method. Use logic on a hurting heart, and you don't heal them, you wound them. Wisdom isn't just knowing what to say. It's knowing when to stop. Part 8. Applying it to modern life. The Socratic Method is not ancient philosophy. It is a modern superpower. In the workplace, instead of commanding, ask, what risks do you see if we do the opposite? People commit more deeply to ideas they help creating sales. Don't pressure. Ask, if your situation doesn't change, where will you be in 6 months? Clarity sells better than persuasion. In parenting or teaching, instead of shouting, ask, what do you think will happen if you do this again? That's where maturity begins in love. When arguments rise, don't ask to win. Ask to connect. What do you need most to feel heard right now? Sometimes, the right question saves a relationship more than the right answer ever could. Conclusion: the ethics of power. Socrates wasn't executed for lies. He was executed for questions. Questions too true for his time. That's the warning and the lesson. Questions are power. Power must be used, careful use then, to humiliate others. And you become a manipulatorist then to awaken others. And you become a philosopher. A Stoic protects 3 virtues. Intellectual humility. You don't know everything. Sincere curiosity. You ask to understand, not to conquer. Collaborative thinking. You seek dialogue, not dominance. And guards against for vices, arrogance, humiliation disguised as wisdom, endless skepticism. The judge's mindset at the end of it all. Socrates left humanity with one final question. Are you sure you truly understand yourself? Maybe that's the question the world still hasn't answered. Because real power is not making others listen to you, it's helping them hear themselves. If you made it to this moment, you're not here for noise. You're here for clarity. You're here because something inside you refuses to live on autopilot, refuses to accept unexamined beliefs, refuses to stay asleep while the world argues. If this message spoke to you, if you feel like you belong to that rare group, those who seek truth instead of noise, leave just 3 words. I choose awareness. And if you want to walk this path with me, the path of building a clearer mind, a quieter spirit, and a stronger life from within, then subscribe to the channel. Not for the algorithm, not for the numbers, but for the stories, the lessons, and the quiet moments that might shift the way you see the world. The same way they once shifted me. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your heart for staying until the end. I'll see you again on the next step of this journey.